Hello, my name is Roger Smith. I'm the CTO at Florida Hospital's Nicholson Center, where we do education, research, and new product innovations. Today we're talking about a new instrument that's come out called the FlexDex. So everybody's familiar with laparoscopic instruments. Great innovation in surgery of the 1980s. Has essentially become one of the predominant forms of surgery. It allows you to insert small instruments into the body without making large incisions. Fantastic innovation. So unfortunately, it robs you of the flexibility and some of the dexterity of your own hand. So it fixes the instrument and gives you very few degrees of freedom. Now, in the last 10 years or so, the Da Vinci robot has contributed a 7-degree of freedom instrument which the robot can control and move in all kinds of directions. That's been a fantastic addition to surgery, but it also comes with the cost of a $2 million, $1.5 million robot. Well, the FlexDex instrument tries to bridge that, tries to find a sweet spot where you have the low cost and ease of use of a laparoscopic instrument, but the flexibility of that endo-wrist manipulation that a robot has, but simply on a laparoscopic instrument. So you take the FlexDex instrument out of the package and you attach it to your wrist, anchor it to a fixed point, and then with the control firmly in your hand, you're able to move your wrist around very similar to the way you would with a Da Vinci robot, and watch the instrument at the other end float around in 360 degrees, rotate, and you have all the same 7 degrees of freedom that previously had been completely reserved to robotic surgery. So that's a really unique innovation. So the first FlexDex instrument is a pair of graspers or needle drivers. So you reach into the body, you're able to grasp tissue, you're able to hold a needle and drive it through tissue. In the future, you might see a pair of scissors at the end of that instrument, or you might see a cautery. We don't know yet. So we've talked about the advantages of the FlexDex instrument. It comes with a few limitations. Once it's anchored to your arm, you really can't get loose from it. I mean, it's attached to your arm, it becomes part of your arm for the duration of the surgery, or until an assistant comes and helps you take it off and set it aside so you can use a different instrument. So unlike laparoscopic instruments and robotic instruments where you can easily let go and re-grasp, let go and re-grasp, that's not so easy because of the way it's strapped to your wrist. The second thing is that you tend to want to use that on one hand but leave your other hand free because of that encumbrance, that attachment. It's possible you could put FlexDex on both hands if somebody would assist you. So you could have scissors in one hand and a grasper in the other hand and use them together. But you would find that you are attached to those instruments and it's very difficult to get free. So somebody has to help you don them, and somebody has to help you take them off if you're using them on both hands. Kind of similar to a boxer who needs help putting his gloves on because it becomes rather cumbersome to get that second glove on. Now the FlexDex might also be a great instrument for your assistant to use. So the surgeon may not actually have to use it, but the assistant might use it to introduce sutures and grasp debris that's being taken out of the body. So the assistant would be the one with the wrist maneuvers and the more flexibility to do his job as opposed to the surgeon. Both of those could happen. Once the FlexDex is attached to your wrist, the movements of your arm then translate to the movements of the instrument tip. You no longer have the buffer like you do in laparoscopic instruments where your fingers can absorb some of that float and buffer the movement of the instrument from the movements of the arm. Now that they're attached together, movements of the arm will translate right into the movements of the instrument. So the surgeon's going to have to be careful about how he uses and maneuvers this arm. And then finally we see that the FlexDex instrument is a disposable instrument. That's very convenient, very efficient for delivering it to the surgeon and taking it away afterwards. It makes it a little costly because whatever the instrument costs, it's only used for one surgery as opposed to a laparoscopic instrument which is largely reusable over and over and over again. And the Da Vinci instruments have multiple uses, usually 10 per instrument. And roughly the price per surgery for a Da Vinci instrument is around $250. We don't know what the cost of a FlexDex instrument is, but it would essentially be compared to that $250 price point of a Da Vinci Life. In the future, we might see that the FlexDex gets manufactured in two parts. One part that might be disposable, and then the more expensive handle might be reusable. Or we might see that there's a draping system so that the instrument, you can prevent some parts of the instruments from getting dirty and not having to be disposed of and not have to go through cleaning as well. But in closing, the FlexDex instrument itself is incredibly ingenious. It's surprising that it has taken this many decades for somebody to come up with an idea that is so flexible while still providing the traditional laparoscopic instrument approach, but giving that endo-wrist manipulation that people have wished for at least a decade.